Welcome to the Feast Life, where we empower you, the modern homeschool mom, to create a life and homeschool you love, one founded on faith, family, freedom, and fun. I'm your host, Julie Ross, creator of the award-winning homeschool curriculum, A Gentle Feast, and a certified Christian life coach. For more information on today's episode and to access my free gift for you, check out thefeastlife.me. Charlotte Mason once said, "Life should be all living, not a mere tedious passing of time." So on this show, we seek to savor the feast of life. Girl, grab your favorite beverage and pull up a chair. You are welcome at this table. So yesterday we talked about what I call the gentle path, that as opposed to our traditional school mindset that is standardized and is very high pressure and is very much focused on results, that there is another way to teach our children, which is what has been around for hundreds of years and is actually how human beings learn best. And so Charlotte Mason, the way that her approach works, it's very much honoring of the child, and it's actually giving them the nourishment that they need for their minds to grow. And like she says, we don't necessarily need a better method of education, but we need a more accurate view of children. And so it's part of it is deprogramming ourselves from the traditional school mindset. Even if we maybe didn't go to a traditional school, it's so wrapped up in our society, and our society is so high pressure and results focused on childhood these days that even if that wasn't your school experience, you're still going to be exposed to that everywhere you go pretty much. And so it's being able to even recognize that pressure and see when it's coming up in your life subtly, and then making a choice, if you so choose, to choose a different path for your homeschool. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going to go over today. So I just wanted to lay that foundation for those who are not here. So if we're going to make a new path, a gentle path, the first thing we need to do is we need to set up the guardrails. So we need to say, okay, like I'm making a path in the woods, and this is where I'm going to be laying the path. We need to have our direction and our purpose. And I see the guide rails in a Charlotte Mason style education as the role of the teacher and the role of a student. And kind of getting your understanding of these two roles are so key, again, because our traditional school mindset confuses those and has such a different approach than how Charlotte Mason said. So even subtly, it can influence your homeschool. Even if you've been doing Charlotte Mason forever, sometimes we don't realize the way these subtle influences can infiltrate our homes. So whether you're new to this philosophy and new to homeschooling, or you've been doing this forever, I hope you can really glean something out of today's call in terms of what is your role in educating your children, and then what is their role and what is the difference between the two of them and how we can form that path. Okay, so first, in a traditional school, and again, most of y'all know this, so I'm just reviewing what most of you probably experienced, but the teacher pre-digests the knowledge. So the teacher, gosh, when I was a public school teacher, I would spend my entire summer reading through books and going on Pinterest and trying to find all these ideas. And well, when I was a public school teacher, Pinterest didn't exist. There were like these little, what would they call it? Mailbox magazines. And I used to have to go to the mimeograph, and this is how old I am, to copy all these little worksheets for my kindergarten class. And basically, I'm the one digesting all the knowledge. I'm deciding what's important, what's not important, how I want to package it. Do I want to make it a PowerPoint or a game or put it into little centers? And then I'm going to spoon feed it to my students. Charlotte Mason uses the example of a mama bird pre-digesting the food and then vomiting up into the baby's mouth. Why does the mama bird do that? Because the baby bird can't chew and digest the food on its own yet. And so the mama's bird has to digest it for the baby. But Charlotte Mason says, no, our children are capable of so much more than we give them credit for. They're actually able to come in age-appropriate developmental stages to digest this meat and this food for themselves. We don't need to be the ones pre-digesting it for them. All right, and then the teacher will assess the knowledge. Okay, this could be a test, a quiz, a paper, something like that, based on what the teacher thinks the students should know. And like when I was planning my lesson plans, we'd have to be like, at the end of this lesson, the student will be able to blah. So this is the outcome, okay? And then I'm going to measure the outcome. Did they meet this outcome based on whatever I thought was important from the lessons? Then the teacher motivates the students. And I put that in quotes because we know these kind of things can have short-term motivation, but they don't instill long-term internal motivation that will drive a love of learning for a lifetime. And so the teacher uses entertainment, like personality or videos or songs or things like that, to get the students' attention, to motivate them to want to learn this stuff. And that's going on the personality of the teacher. I know you all probably had really good teachers with great personalities and you just liked them. So you wanted to do good work because like they were just super sweet. Like I think of Miss Honey and Matilda, right? All the kids in her class just thought she was amazing. And I know I had teachers like that growing up that I just thought they were like so wonderful. I wanted to do well for them. But what happens the next year when you don't have that same teacher? So again, it's that external motivation. Rewards, grades, etc., are always putting the motivation out here rather than building that habit of motivation from within the child. Okay. So if we're not going down that traditional path, what does it look like? What is the teacher actually doing? And I think there can be a lot of myths and misconceptions about Charlotte Mason's philosophy when it comes to the role of the teacher and the role of the student. It's not, I'm not going down this traditional path. My kid's just going to decide whatever they want to learn is what we're going to learn. And we're just going to have these laissez-faire days. No, the teacher has a definite role. And let's dive into kind of what that looks like. So I have all my little Charlotte Mason volumes laid out here. So I'm going to be laying a lot of quotes on you and a lot of reading because she says it so much better than I do. Okay, so first of all, the teacher on the gentle path is a guide, philosopher, and friend. Okay, and that comes from volume 6. Let me read to you what she has to say about that. My volume 6 is falling apart. Okay. In urging a method of self-education for children in lieu of the various education which prevails, I should like to dwell on the enormous relief to teachers, a self-sacrificing and greatly overburdened class. And that is so true. I have so many friends who are public school teachers and they are like saints. I tell them this constantly, like the work that they do and the things that they have going on, they are saints. So Charlotte Mason was right there, for teachers are just so wonderful. The difference is between driving a horse that is light and a horse that is heavy in hand. The former covers the ground of his own will, and the driver goes merrily. The teacher who allows his scholars the freedom of the city of books is at liberty to be their guide, philosopher, and friend, and is no longer the mere instrument of forcible intellectual feeding. Again, using that metaphor of the mom bird predigesting the food for the baby bird. Okay, so a guide, philosopher, and friend. I just love that picture, don't you? That's what I want to be for my kids, like for their whole lives. And so I'm setting that up now. I'm not the teacher and I know everything and I'm going to teach it to you. No, we are on this journey. We are learning together. So I've already been down this road. I've learned a lot of things. I can help guide you, but I'm not like forcing you, like she talks about, like with a whip of a horse. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go, right? A philosopher, we can just have discussions about big ideas and really cool things. How fun is that? And then just to be like their friend. And I'm not being like, oh, let's go shopping. And I'm like your bosom buddy, but we can have these mutual discussions. We can talk about things that we're learning and growing in, just like I would a friend as well. And that the relationship is pleasant. Like I'm like, I want to hang out with someone who's my friend. I want to like call them up on the phone and be like, oh my gosh, you can't believe what just happened to me today. I want my kids to feel that way about me too. So that is such a beautiful picture. I love that term. Okay. And then another thing the teacher does is it excites the appetite. So the reason my curriculum is called A Gentle Feast is Charlotte Mason talks about food a lot. She's a woman after my own heart. Okay. So basically she's saying that children need a certain kind of mental food in order to grow their minds, just like their bodies need certain kind of healthy food to grow their bodies properly. Our role as the teacher is to excite their appetite. So this book comes from When Children Love to Learn. I'm going to put all my book recommendations and quotes and things in a resource for you guys at the end of this. Don't feel like you need to write all the books down. But in here, she says, the idea may exist in a clear, distinct, and definite form as that of a circle in the mind of a geometrician, or it may be a mere instinct, a vague appetency towards something, like the impulse which fills the young poet's eyes with tears, he knows not why. To excite this appetency towards something, towards things lovely, honest, and of good report, is the earliest and most important ministry of the educator. So our role as the teacher is to help excite our children's appetite for things that are lovely, honest, and good. How do we do that? How do we help Just like we want our children to like not like detest food that's healthy for them, right? We want the same thing with things that are beautiful and good that they are learning about. Because again, our culture and society is so the complete opposite of that, right? And they're going to be bombarded with things that are not true, that are not beautiful, that are not good on a regular basis. And we're training them to like the things, just like we're training them to like some broccoli, to help them like these things that are beautiful and good: poetry, art, scripture, songs, stories, things like that. So we're going to fill our days with those things. And by exposing our children to these things, we're going to help increase their appetite for those. Okay, and then the teacher plans and prepares the feast. So this is from school education. Here's what she has to say. Let them learn from firsthand sources of information, really good books, the best going on the subject they are engaged upon. Let them get at the books themselves, and do not let them be flooded with a warm dilune at the lips of their teacher. Okay, now here, listen very closely because there's several verbs in the sentence that are important. The teacher's business is to indicate, stimulate, direct, and constrain to the acquirement of knowledge, but by no means to be the fountainhead and source of all knowledge in his or own person. The less parents and teachers talk in and expound their rations of knowledge and thought to the children they are educating, the better for the children. Children must be allowed to ruminate, must be left alone with their thoughts. We talked about that yesterday, and the importance of letting kids alone to think through their thoughts and think through all the ideas you're putting them through. So listen, this was the teacher's job, okay? So again, we're not the fountainhead. We don't need to know everything. Can you take a deep breath there? Hallelujah. I do not need to know everything about every subject that my kids need to know, which is great because I don't know everything about every subject. So they can come in source in contact with those people who actually study these things for a living and are really passionate about them. I can put them in touch with those people through books and other resources, and they can learn from those people. I don't need to know it all. That is such a relief, because when I was a teacher, I did have to know it all, right? I'm the one pre-digesting all the food. I have to know. And then when a kid asks a question like, when I taught fifth grade math, oh my, they would ask me these questions and I'd be like, I'm not really sure I know how to do that. You know, and I'm like, oh dear, this is bad because I have to be the one to know it in order to teach it to them. And here's what we do. We indicate. So that is planning out what we are going to be doing. I know what books, I know when, in what order. I have a plan. Okay. It's not just a free for all. I'm going to direct. So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to do this book. Then you're going to come back and narrate to me. We have 20 minutes for this lesson. I'm going to direct our days. And then I'm going to stimulate. Who remembers what happened last time when we read Heidi? Or, oh my goodness, today we're going to sing one of my favorite hymns. You're giving them a little bit of motivation. Again, it's not a show. It's not a circus. We're not here to entertain, but a little stimulating does good sometimes. And then we're constraining. We're keeping our children on course of what they're supposed to be doing during a given time period. Okay, the teacher on the gentle path provides accountability. And this is key because it's not just do whatever, whenever you want approach. There is a definite plan, and we're keeping our children accountable for what it is that we ask them to do. We want them to build, I'll talk about that in a second, about habits, but okay. So she says that the teacher's job is for the appropriation and assimilation of knowledge, okay? We're going to help guide them in this. Children have a right to the best we possess. Therefore, lesson books should be, as far as possible, our best books. You're going to hear this repeated. They weary of talk and questions bore them, so that they should be allowed to use the books for themselves. They will ask for help if they wish. They require a great variety of knowledge about religion, humanities, science, and art. Therefore, they should have a wide curriculum. So lots of the feast that Charlotte Mason talks about is there's a lot of different subjects here. You're just getting them in little bite-sized pieces. You're not like stuffing them all into your child every day, but over the course of a week, over a course of a year, over a course of a life, they're being exposed to all these beautiful, wonderful subjects. The teacher affords direction, sympathy in studies, a vivifying word here and there, help in the making of experiments, teaching of mathematics, etc. And then the teacher is going to hear the child narrate, which we will talk about in a little bit. It's not go read this or go listen to this, and then there's no accountability. The teacher is keeping the child accountable because it's okay, come tell me about that. And if a child can't narrate, which we're going to get to, then they don't know it. So they didn't actually probably read it very well, or if you're reading it to them. And again, it's a skill. We'll get to narration. People have lots of questions about that, but you are providing that accountability. So it's on us. And again, it's a huge weight, I feel like, off our shoulders to know that we don't have to know everything about everything. And we don't have to come up with all these like entertaining and amazing ways to present the material to our children and feed it to them. We just get to present the feast. But we do have to remember that we are called to be consistent, to provide that accountability. And if students can get into the habit of knowing that we're not going to ask them for a narration, they're not going to read that well because they're human beings, right? We all like to take the easy path, okay? Gentle's not easy. And I get that misconception a lot. Is that what you mean by a gentle feast? It's easy? I'm like, oh, I'm not pushing and prodding. That's the traditional path, right? It's a gentle path. It feels life-giving. But there is still accountability and there's still a plan. All right. The gentle path guides children in good habits. So like I was saying here with this accountability, if they know that they can just read and they don't have to pay attention, natural human tendency, they're not going to pay attention. So we want to instill good habits in them. Charlotte Mason says education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. By discipline, she means habit. So 1/3 of our job as a parent is to help our children in the formation of good habits. We know that to form in his child right habits of thinking and behaving is a parent's chief duty, that this can be done for every child, definitely within given limits of time. We're going to talk about habits all day tomorrow. I'm going to move on from that one, but just keep that in the back of your mind, okay? And then another thing the teacher does is the teacher presents living ideas. To nourish a child daily with loving, right, and noble ideas, we believe to be the parent's next duty. The child, having once received the idea, will assimilate it in his own way and work it into the fabric of his life. And a single sentence from his mother's lips may give him a bent that will make him be a painter or a poet or a statesman or a philanthropist. The objects of the lesson should be in the main twofold: to train the child in good mental habits like attention, accuracy, and to nourish him with the ideas which may bear fruit in his life. So these ideas, where did these ideas come from? Oftentimes they come from books. They can come also from things. They can come from out in nature, from art, from music. But in Charlotte Mason education, most of the time you're going to find them in the books that you're reading. The beautiful living books are full of rich ideas. Okay, here's what Charlotte Mason had to say. One more thing is of vital importance. Children must have books, living books. The best are not too good enough for them. Anything less than the best is not good enough. And if it is needful to exercise economy, let everything that belongs to soft and luxurious living before letting go the duty of supplying books. So now when you get that Amazon box on the porch, you can read this quote to your husband and tell him, Charlotte Mason said I was supposed to have the very best books. So that's why, and we can forego something else because I want these. No, I'm just kidding. But you're saying books are so important. We need not say one word about the necessity for living thought in the teacher. It is only so far as he is intellectually alive that he can be effective in this wonderful process we call education. So again, and I didn't put this on there, but I should have, the teacher on the gentle path is consistently filling their own mind. Are you growing in learning alongside? You're the guide, your philosopher friend, you're traveling down this path too. So it's not, you're pulling and prodding your children along this path. No, you're walking like arm in arm and you're learning and growing too. And so how are you feeding your own mind and soul? And then get some good books. Now on a gentle feast, like I give resources. There's so many books that are for free in the public domain. You can get books from the library. Like you can borrow books on audio now. Like there's Kindle. There's so many resources for these great books. But in Charlotte Mason's day, like good books were like super expensive, like a super big investment for a family.
Hey, Julie Ross here. I am guessing you might be knee-deep in homeschool planning for next year at this point. It's so fun and exciting, isn't it? But it can also be a little overwhelming. And picking out all the best resources and figuring out what to do is a lot of work. And if you're anything like me, you can have all the best books and all the best resources, but when it comes to like, how do I actually plan out my days? And what do we actually do on a Monday so that I can provide my children the most life-giving, nourishing, educational experience? It can seem a little overwhelming. So if that sounds like you, don't worry, I am doing a free workshop called the 5 Steps to a Life-Giving Homeschool, where I break it down with my very simple framework on how to organize your routine to create the most amazing homeschool filled with connection and creativity. And I would love to have you join me. It's going to be on June 24th. I'm going to put the link below to sign up. If you can't make it live, don't worry. There'll be replays sent out. But I wanted to offer this free workshop to help parents create a very simple rhythm and routine to their homeschool days so that it can be the most life-giving experience. If you would like to join me, just go to thefeastlife.me/life-giving homeschool. That's all one word. Again, that's thefeastlife.me/life-giving homeschool, and we'll get you all signed up.
All right, and then the teacher designs the timetables. So the teacher sets up the rhythm and the flow of your days. Okay, and Charlotte Mason used this concept of short lessons here. And it's the teacher's job to ensure that the child's paying attention, to build that habit, to have the short lessons, and to devise like a routine and a schedule for your days that makes sense, that flows depending on your child's age. Her concept of short lessons was extremely developmentally appropriate. Remember, I was saying the difference between the gentle path and the traditional path. One of the differences is that Charlotte Mason's approach is developmentally appropriate. So little children cannot sit at a desk for 2 hours a day. Their little bodies cannot do it. And it was so frustrating as a kindergarten teacher. It's like these expectations that these little 5-year-olds are going to just sit at a desk. They can't do that. And most adults can't, right? And her focus is on building this habit of attention. I think the adult attention span now is like down to 3 seconds they've measured. Thank you to smart devices. So that don't make us smart. But anyway, that's a story for another day. And so our children, we're building this habit of attention in them. They can't focus on a language arts lesson for 45 minutes. Okay. When they're little, they can't listen to you read for an hour and then tell you what it was about. Their attention's going to wander. Okay. And so when you're designing the timetables, and Charlotte Mason does give some suggestions for times for various ages, and in a Gentle Feast, I include these, but you can find these on the internet too, of how much they should be covering for each of the different subjects. And so it's our job as the teacher to make a rhythm and a flow for our days that incorporates her principles of scheduling and principles of short lessons. So she says, let us look in at a home schoolroom managed upon sound principles. In the first place, there is a timetable written out fairly so that the child knows what he has to do and how long each lesson is to last. Okay, because there's this universal rule that if we give children all day to do an assignment, it will take them all day to do an assignment. Charlotte Mason is very clear. There is a definite time to do the work. The idea of definite work to be finished in a given time is valuable to the child, not only as training him in habits of order, but in diligence. He learns that one time is not as good as another, that there is no right time left for what is not done in its own time. This knowledge alone does a great deal to secure a child's attention. Again, the lessons are short, seldom more than 20 minutes in length for children under 8, and this is for several reasons. The sense that there is not much time for his sums or his reading keeps the child's wits alert and helps him to fix his attention. He has time to learn just so much of any subject as is good for him to take in at once. And here she goes on to talk about some of how our brains can use different parts of a lesson, how it's good to take some, when you're thinking through your timetables, to look at, okay, math is using one part of your brain, listening to a story, narrating is using a different part. How can I vary that throughout my day to not exhaust my child doing reading and reading and reading and reading and reading? We don't want to do that. So it's our job as a teacher to think through our schedule, our flow, our rhythm, and what works best for each child. Again, this is individualized, it's not standardized, okay? And so I think yesterday, when I was reading through the chat, somebody asked, how do you get your kids to sit there and listen? I'm like, when they were little, they didn't sit there and listen, okay? They were jumping on the trampoline while I was reading to them. They were swinging on the swings while I was reading to them. They were doing somersaults on the floor while I was reading to them. They were eating food while I was reading to them. They were always doing something. Now they're all teenagers and they can just sit and read. But when they were younger, no, that's not appropriate. That's not developmentally. And some kids can. Like when I was a little kid, I could do that. But most of my children could not. And so instead of resisting that, we would do short lessons. And at first, For some of my kids, it was really short. And then we would build on for that habit attention, but now they can pay attention to a whole 30, 45-minute lesson as they've grown up. But it didn't start out that way. People are like, can you give me a schedule of how I can combine like 3 different forms and what we can do each day? And I'm like, I can give you some principles, which is what Charlotte Mason talks about. We only have actually 1 copy of Charlotte Mason's timetables. They're from 1908, 1 year. Out of all the years of the PNEU, we have 1 copy. I'm guessing they probably changed that on a regular basis, or different parents did different things, right? We don't know because we only have 1 copy. And so you as a parent, it's up to you to take her principles, which is what I was telling you about, with short lessons, varying subjects, making sure there's a definite kind of plan. And again, plans can be changed, right? But having a plan at first really helps. And that's our job as a teacher and our role. And it takes some time to work through that and figure it out. So the dental path can be a little messy path sometimes. And we have to work through these. It's not like it was already cleared for us and now we're just walking down this path and somebody did all the work and I just have to follow this work and follow this formula and I will get this result. That's the traditional path. The general path is I'm looking at my child, I'm working in cooperation with the divine spirit, I'm figuring these things out. And so you might make a plan and then 2 months later, you're like, this is not working. This kid needs to go here while I'm working with this kid by themselves. And now we're going to do this activity in the middle of our day. So now we can't do this. Like it's always changing, but having a plan to begin with is so key as a teacher. Okay. And then the last thing the parent does, which is so important to realize, is the teacher sets the tone. We set the atmosphere of our home. And those of you who have been around me have heard me read this quote before. If you've been in my coaching programs, this is pretty much what we talk about for an entire 12 weeks, but it's so key. And I want to reiterate it for the people who have not heard this before. So this quote is actually from a Parents Review magazine article. The Parents Review was a magazine that Charlotte Mason edited. And he wrote, there are many aspects of home life, from first training to highest education, but there is nothing in the way of direct teaching that will ever have so wide and lasting effect as the atmosphere of home. And the gravest thought concerning this, in this instance, is there's nothing to learn and nothing to teach. The atmosphere emanates from ourselves, us as the teacher, literally is ourselves. The children live in it and breathe it, and we are thus incorporated into them. There is no pretense here or possibility of evasion. We may deceive ourselves, but in the long run, we never deceive our children. The spirit of home lives, our more home atmosphere, is accentuated in them. Atmosphere is much more than teaching and infinitely more than talk. Woo! I remember reading that. I was so convicted because the atmosphere of my home was stressful. I felt like I was a dictator and we're always going from this. And why didn't you do that? And that was supposed to be done 10 minutes ago. And you need to finish this and all day long. And I realized, like I was telling you yesterday, a lot of that was influenced by the way I was brought up, by the pressure I felt like of the traditional school mindset. And I was like, this isn't the atmosphere that I want. Charlotte Mason again says education is an atmosphere, a discipline, habits, and a life. Those living ideas from books. So atmosphere is 1/3 of the tools we have as a teacher, but it's something we never talk about, right? It's what math curriculum are you using? Or can I combine my 4th grader with my 3rd grader for geography? And we get so stressed in all these little details, but we miss like this big, huge picture of what is the atmosphere of my homeschool? What atmosphere am I creating? Because it's coming from me. And that's so important to think through as a teacher. Okay, here are some just few little simple things you can do to help with the atmosphere of your home. Playing relaxing music when it's time for school. Or like Ashley and me, we do like dance parties before school. So either one is totally fine. Okay, relax. We could be relaxed and chill, or we could get the vibe up and the energy up before school. Okay. Creating inviting spaces. If we want our children to love to read books, they need to have spaces in your house to go read books, like little cozy corners like this in this picture. Value students collection. Does anybody else's kids love to bring them stuff on nature walks? Yes. Okay. And I'm not saying you got to keep it all, but you can get rid of some of those rocks. But I still have my teenagers my kids found some of the coolest stuff, y'all. Horseshoe crab shells. And we found this one rock that has like fossils in it once on a rock. We keep all that stuff. I want to show them like what they're finding is important. So maybe have a little part of your house where you can display their nature collection or their art projects or things like that. Teaching them habits of order. This is so important. So where does our stuff go when we're finished? Where do I find the pencils? How do I sharpen a pencil? I don't know about you, but pencils seem to disappear at my house. So like having at the end of every school day, we spend 15 minutes cleaning up our stuff so we're ready for tomorrow. Teaching them these habits of order is so important to change the atmosphere of your home. It displaying beautiful artwork. So if like the picture prints that you're using for your studies, displaying them or just displaying beautiful artwork, it doesn't be what you're studying, so they can see that and have that picture gallery in their mind. And then make your living books accessible to them. So again, I realize like some of them are very priceless. You can put those up high. Like I have some that are like, I have an original copy of our island story that's worth like $300. No one is touching that. Okay. But if I want my kids to be like reading these books on a regular basis and love these books, put them in baskets, put them where they can get them from the bottom shelf. And when they're bored, they can go and they can find those books. Okay. So if we're doing all these things, right, it can feel like a lot, but I promise you it is a lot, and it is a great responsibility that we have to homeschool our children, but it is so much less than if we are trying to pre-digest all the knowledge and figure out how we're supposed to teach it to our kids. So we're putting them in touch with these great books, with these great minds, and they are doing what? What are our kids actually doing? Now, in the traditional path, right, the children are just little empty passive buckets. Like I'm just sitting here waiting for my teacher to tell me what's going to be on the test and what's important, and then I might actually put some effort in. We don't want that. So we want our children to be motivated lifelong learners. How do we do that? So Charlotte Mason said it's through self-education. It doesn't mean they're just going to learn and decide to do whatever they want. Okay. So again, I want to make sure that you have that distinction here. There is a path, there is a plan, but what is the student's work? So she says, one thing at any rate we know with certainty, that no teaching, no information becomes knowledge to any of us until the individual mind has acted upon it, translated it, transformed, absorbed it to reappear like our bodily food in forms of vitality. Therefore, teaching, talk and tale, however lucid or fascinating, affect nothing until self-activity be set up. That is, self-education is the only possible education. The rest is a mere veneer laid on the surface of a child's nature. So it can sound like, okay, well, what does that actually mean? What is the kid actually doing? Listen, look, they're going to take the knowledge that's coming to them. They're going to act upon it, translate it, absorb it, just like you would your food. Okay. This comes down to the process of what Charlotte Mason called narrating. She said, narrating is the act of knowing. It's very simple. This is why this path is so powerful, is because of this process right here. Charlotte Mason said, as human beings, we naturally communicate what we know. Why would we not use that as a form of working out a child's education? Why do we feel the need to ask them basic recall questions or fill their days with busy work so we look like we've learned something today, but then they totally forget it a week later? Narration is the act of knowing. If you can tell something to someone, you actually know it. So if one of your friends was like, hey, what was that gentle art of homeschooling thing all about? And you tell them, then you actually know the things that you took out of this call. That's why I'm asking you all to narrate in the Facebook group, right? So it's very simple. But as parents, we can freak out about it. And I think a lot of it has to do with our public school mentality, that traditional school mentality. Like my child's narrating, but I don't think they're really getting enough out of it because like, they're missing some details and we think, again, this is what it should look like. This is the result that I'm expecting. And my child is doing this. And we can put so much pressure, unwilling, not even knowing we're doing this, on our children, that their narrations have to look how we expect them to look. And that's going to create resistance and turn a child off like nobody's business. Okay. I'm not saying you don't ever encourage your children to put more into their narration. Once they get to like middle school, I would help my children edit their written narrations. That's later. I have a whole class on narration, so I'm going to put that in here, but I really want to touch on this because this is the work the student's doing. Charlotte Mason said, if you want to see what narration's like, read Dickens or Austen, and then the next day narrate it to somebody. I would encourage you, read Charlotte Mason's volumes and then narrate to someone. Because you will realize what higher level thinking skills. So when your child's narrating, so let's say you read Aesop's Fables to your child. That's always a great one to start with because it's very easy if they've never narrated before, because they're very short and they are a story. So you read Aesop's Fables and you're like, okay, so tell me what happened in the story. What does your child have to do? They have to take all the information and all the words that just came into their brain, right? They have to sort them decide what's important, what's not important, what order do things happen in, right? And then they have to communicate that in words to somebody else. Do you realize all those higher level thinking skills that happen in that very simple 2-minute process, right? As opposed to a basic level kind of recall question doesn't use all that higher level thinking. And we can get stressed at first if our kids aren't narrating the way we think they should, but we don't realize this is such a hard mental concept. It's a muscle and it gets strengthened over time. But once kids can narrate, they can learn anything. Once they know how to go to a book, go to a source, take the information in, sort it, figure out what's important, what's not important, put it into their own words, they're going to be able to learn all kinds of stuff. I remember my daughter in one of her history classes in college, I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? She, oh my gosh, mom, it's so easy. I was like, really? Why? So all we have to do every week is read a chapter and then we have to write about it. So I've been doing that my whole life. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Glad you got that. And it just becomes like natural. Like this is just what people do. So it's not, again, it's a muscle, it's a process. I will link in the email that we send out with the replays or maybe in the Facebook group, like I have a whole hour-long talk on narration. So I'm not going to keep going with that because I want to make sure we have time to hear from some people today. But just so you know, if you have been using this and you find that you are frustrated with it, go watch that talk because there's so much in there. And this is really a simple yet very powerful way to interact with your children. And what a beautiful gift we give our children. I just want to acknowledge that. We are listening to what they have to say and what they think is important. Compared to the other path where it's, this is what I think is important. If you don't know these 5 things, then you get an F. Like it's night and day different to go, okay, you thought that was important. I thought this was important in the story about George Washington, but you thought it was really important that he was yelling at his little brother. That's what you're going to remember from this story, right? But all these different things will eventually get in with your children as well. Okay, what else are our children doing in a Charlotte Mason education? They're observing science experiments, nature, art. They're making connections, which is so cool. Charlotte Mason said education is the science of relations. I love it. My kids make these connections between things I would have never connected. Again, it's not the teacher's job to make those connections. When I was a public school teacher, I could make a darn good unit study. Like we're going to learn about oceans and we're going to read all these books and do art about oceans and music about oceans and do all this stuff with oceans. And I was doing all the work of making the connections for the kids. No wonder I was so tired. So our kids can make those connections for themselves and then they actually own it and it's meaningful to them. They're building good habits. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Doing their best. They're playing, they're exploring, they're learning from their mistakes. What an amazing gift. Again, we give our kids that they can learn from their mistakes. It's not like you have to get it right and you have to get it right now. And if you don't get it right now, then you fail. And then you're like, oh, I guess I'm never going to know this. No, learn something, try something. It doesn't work. Okay, awesome. Like now we know how not to do that. Actually, there's that movie, a cartoon called Meet the Robinsons, and we love it around here. But he makes all these like inventions as like a little scientific kid. So if you have a scientific kid, go watch the movie. It's so cute. Meet the Robinsons. And in it, he's trying to make this invention with this peanut butter and jelly sprayer, and it keeps not working and not working. And at one point, he makes it, and it just peanut butter and jelly goes all over the house. And the whole entire family starts cheering for him. And he's, what is happening? And they're like, oh my goodness, you failed. That's so awesome. Because now you know that doesn't work. Like Edison said, right? I learned 1,000 ways not to invent a light bulb. We can give our kids these freedom. We don't have to know it all right. We have to know it right now. And that's what's causing all the stress in our kids' youth, right? We can learn from our mistakes. Okay, I don't think that was Abraham Lincoln crossing the Delaware. Who do you think that might be? Like we can have these conversations with our kids without berating them, be like, that's wrong. And then they actually learn it. That's how human beings learn, by making mistakes, trying things. It doesn't work. We fail. We get back up. We try something else. And we need to allow our kids the freedom to do that too. And then our kids need to have a humble, teachable heart. And that Charlotte Mason talks about, that's part of this habit of, I don't know everything, but I'm going to try. All right. And this is my favorite Charlotte Mason quote. If you're in the Charlotte Mason world, I'm sure you've heard this before. But we all need to hear this today, especially at the end of the school year. The question is not, how much does the youth know when he finishes education, but how much does he care? And about how many orders of things does he care? In fact, how large is the room in which he finds his feet set? And therefore, how full is the life he has before him? So remember, we're not educating our kids so that they can be this result, so they can have a life later, right? We're putting them in this big room. The gentle path is a wide path. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow, about how it expands and grows over time. And we are giving our kids this gift by having a clear understanding of our role as the teacher and their role as the student. And we are putting them in touch with so many beautiful things, so many wonderful ideas that they do care. Most kids do not care about learning. And that was like my kids in college, they would get so frustrated with like their peers because they're like, they just don't care. Like, it's just, how do we get through this? What's the least amount of work we can do to pass this class so we can move on to the next thing? And it wasn't like, I want to learn this because I'm in this class and I'm paying a lot of money for it because it's interesting, right? That never occurred to them. That was their product of their education. I'm like, no, I want my kids to actually care. Because if they care, then they're always going to want to learn. They're always going to want to grow. They're always going to want to try new things and expand their minds. All right, so how do we build the gentle path? Today, we talked about putting up those guardrails, the role of the teacher and the role of the student. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the habits, clearing all the debris out, and then how we can fertilize and cultivate that to expand and grow on this path over time as our kids continue to grow. Hey there, Julie Ross here. I just wanted to say thank you for listening to today's episode. If you like this show, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a positive review in iTunes. This really does help people learn about the podcast. And each month, I will pick a winner to receive a free gift. Don't forget to check out all the free resources we created for you at thefeastlife.me. Thank you.